Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. We're so excited to have you. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I am your host today from SWK Technologies. So I love seeing everyone already sounding off in the chat where they're joining from. I love to see where people are coming from. I am a former North Carolina native. I'm now located in Loveland, Colorado. So it's great to see people across the country on this Tuesday. So we're going to get started in just a moment. I'm going to bring Justin Sanchez on to talk about everything you need to know for Acumatica year end. But before we dive into that, I have just a couple logistical boring things to cover before we dive in. So this session is being recorded. We're going to send out the recording to everyone tomorrow afternoon. So keep an eye out in your inbox. You can also catch our webinar recordings and other helpful Acumatica content on our YouTube channel. So if you've never checked that out before, definitely take a look. You're on mute, but we would love to hear from you in the chat, as we've already said. So, continue to participate in the chat throughout the session. And then we're also going to do Q&A at the end. So we'll leave time for Q&A at the end of the session. And you can ask those questions at any time whenever they occur to you. No need to hold on to them. You can put them in the chat or the Q&A in the right-hand side of your screen. And I'll make sure that we have those questions ready for Justin at the end of the session. So it looks like that covers everything. Great to see a great group from across the country. Let's bring Justin on so that we can go ahead and dive into everything Acumatica year end. Hey, Justin, how are you doing?
Hi, Courtney. Thanks. I'm well. Awesome. Excited to be here with everyone and can't wait to get into the material we have. So super excited. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll let you take it away. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the year-end information that we have for Acumatica. And I think what's really important is before we get into the platform and start walking through the different closure of financial periods and things like that. And that's what the intent of today's session is really for us to walk through the different subledgers and go through the modules and maybe give some tips and tricks on how to look at some of these modules a little differently, payables to receivables, and then provide those steps that will help you, close the year end and will allow for you to move into your new year. But before we do that, there's a couple of pieces of information that I want to share with you all. And this is what I have on the screen now is this 2025 year-end information. And this is really specific to 1099 reporting. It's really important. Acumatica posted this. If you belong to the community forum, Acumatica posted this information within that community. If you don't belong or have not yet registered for the community, I suggest that you do that so that you're able to review the information, and because there are updates that need to come from this. And so one of the things first there is the golden parachute payments, which are still included in the 1099 miscellaneous e-file on the create e-file screen, and in box 14 miscellaneous 14 on the 1099 miscellaneous form. And then we give you the form screen ID there, which is AP 653000. And so it's important to know that what this means is that for e-file through the FIRE system, that should not be included any longer. Golden parachute payments should not be included according to what the federal government has required. And so Acumatica is working on an update for this right now. I believe actually since, in fact, putting this information on, I did see that that they had made an update to 25 R2 and they had rolled that patch out. From what I understand, they will be rolling out to 25 R1, and then they are going to be doing a back roll of the patch as well, because it should not be in the e-filing when you're sending it, right? And so I wanted to include that information here so that you know that right now golden parachute payments are included. They should not be, according to new federal standards. The other part of this is that the system is still excluding, and it is excluding Oregon and including Missouri in the combined federal and state filing state list, even though the IRS instructions for this require Oregon to be added and Missouri to be removed. So there are some state issues there as well. And so Acumatica is looking at that as well. And I would encourage you to, again, get registered in the community. Those are where those updates are at. If you have questions, you can always send a support case into our team, and we can always look into that for you as well. And so, again, Acumatica plans to address these things, and they'll have patches that will be rolling out to the software that go ahead and make these changes. But again, it's worth noting this were some of the bigger changes for 2025, the year end. So I wanted to make sure that everyone had that information. Okay. The next piece is we'll go into the different subledgers and start talking through those pieces right now. A couple of things, just housekeeping, so that everybody understands kind of as we work through these pieces of information here, is that I'm going to be using a 2025 R2 environment. So the system will have the new modern UI. So you'll see a little bit of that today. And I thought it was important because as folks are either considering upgrading or moving to will be moving to the new environment. I thought it was important that we look at that together and go through that. So a lot of these functions, most of these functions are still in or would still be applicable. They're just screens that we're walking through. So even though they look a little different, the screens are still in 24R2. I made sure of that before getting ready, or 24R1 as well. So if you're on an older version, no worries. I'm not going over anything that is not going to be in those versions. But I just wanted to call that out before we start moving through the application and you see that it looks a little different. So again, we are in the modern UI. We're going to look at it through that. Another piece of this is that I'm using test data. So in some of the test data that I have, it's really specific for this demo. And so some of it we'll kind of walk through and some of it might be more specific to you. So in some of these concepts, we'll talk generally about them, and that'll allow for us enough time to get through every subject, right? And so in some of them, I'll go into less detail if it's a niche area. And in others, I'll kind of do a little more deep dive explanation. And so if you end up having questions for us, you can always put those in the chat. We'll get to them at the Q&A, and then anything that cuts over, we can have somebody from our support team reach out and help cover any of those gaps. Okay, great. So moving on to the next piece of our presentation here, we've got the accounts payable. That's where we'll start. And in here, what we plan to go through for this part of the presentation is we're going to review and release any unreleased transactions, which should be noted, right? I mean, that is part of the AP module. So you would have done this as your closing periods, right, throughout the year, but we're going to review that. We'll revalue any multi-currency vendors and in the system, and we'll use a screen CM504 to do that. And then we'll reconcile the AP subledger against the GL account balance so that we can see a trial balance to make sure that those two are tying out, right? So very similar to what we do for like a go live, and we'll show you what that looks like. And then once we have done those actions, we'll go ahead and close the period. Okay, so we're going to walk through those steps now and go on over to Acumatica. So, great. So here we are in this screen here for Acumatica, and we'll go over to the payable screen, and you'll see I already have the closed financial periods that's been favorited, and then I've got my AP balance by GL account report that's also been favorited. My recommendation is that you favorite these so that you don't have to go into the actual module spaces, but you can go to your favorites here, and then you're able to reference these there as well. One of the other things I want to bring up that I think is important is if we go into our master financial calendar here, this is going to allow for us to see, and right now we're looking at financial year 2026. I think it's important to know I still have transactions that I'm working through for 2025, and this is a test environment, but through my demo, I'm still working on stuff. So what the year that we'll be closing for the purposes of this demo is 2024. So in order to prepare for that, I went ahead and changed my system date to be 12/30 of 2024. So even though we're in a 25 R2 environment, I'm obviously closing the 24 period, 24 periods, and then 24 financial years. So let's take a look at this, and you'll notice that throughout the year in 2024, you would have worked through and closed each of these periods, right? It's also important to know that if you have, there's a user role, it's a financial a supervisor role in Acumatica that allows for you to post to periods that are closed. And so the reason why I'm sharing that is that in the event that you needed to close a period, but then continue to post in that period, that role is open to you. Now, obviously, we advise that you use that sparingly and that it's not a role that you give to all folks, especially if you might have clerks that are working through some of that stuff that you may not want them to post to closed periods, but that does exist, right? So sometimes when we go through this exercise, folks will go and say, well, I've kept these periods open to allow for me to post in those periods over time or throughout the year. And the problem with that is that when we get to the end of the year and now we need to close it, some of these periods have not been maintained or managed throughout the year. So now the closing of the year can seem like a bigger endeavor, right? And so something is just an option for you is that if you close these periods, but you have that financial supervisor role, you're more than able to go back in and post any of these subledgers there. That allows you to do that, or post to the general ledger. You're able to do that. So here's an example of this financial calendar year for 2024. As you can see, throughout the months here, I've been closing the periods as expected. And you can see here that you can see an APAR, inventory, cash, and financial fixed assets, excuse me. You'll see that we have gone through each of these, and these have been closed respectively. So you'll notice that for the final period of the year, December, well, we're not going to talk about the adjustment period right now, but for the final period of the year in December here, you'll notice that I don't have any of my subledgers closed. And so that's what we're going to be working on today. All right. And so you can always reference this master financial calendar to find out the statuses of your respective periods and find out if you've closed one subledger as opposed to another. All right. So let's go into the payables here. And so one of the first things that we want to do is look at any unreleased transactions. And so a quick and easy way to do that is to just go into close financial periods. And if we select the period here, and by the way, the system will not let us close a period if there is an unreleased transaction there, right? So, and the way to find that here is if we select the period and then select unreleased documents, the platform will open up a second window here, and we can see that that we do have, in fact, a bill here that is, that has not been released yet. And so because of that, and it might be, I don't think you can see my tab, so I'm going to move over to share this tab. So here's the report that you can see here. And so in this report here, you'll now see that that it's telling me that I've got an unreleased AP document here, and the document type being the bill here, right? And so it's calling it out as being that it's unreleased, and so if I try and close the period here, it won't let me do that. All right, let's go back over to this tab here. Perfect. And so in here, and if I tried to process that, let's see what would happen. So if I go in and I just process this action to close, you're going to see that I do get an error here. And if I expand this out, it'll tell me that I've got unreleased documents that exist for period 1224 for that financial period, right? And so the system will prevent us from doing that. You can see I've got other actions as well, meaning I can reopen periods if I needed to. But I've gone ahead and in preparation for our demo here, I've gone through and reconciled and closed those periods already. Okay, so let's take a look at what that is. And so if I go into my payables, that's actually a bill that I added earlier for the purposes of this discussion today. And so I'm going to go in and take a quick look at this. And it was just something I put on hold. And so this relates to even documents that you have on hold that could be preventing you from closing the period. So we'll go into there. And we'll take a quick peek at what this is. And this is really just a bill that was being entered, but I forgot to finish it, right? So that might happen, right? Or it might be a bill that we thought we were going to get. And so I decided that, well, this is no longer needed. So let's go ahead and delete this. That's what I'll do here. And it was on hold, and so I hadn't released it to the for the batch to impact the GL. So because of that, I was able to delete it without any issues there. Okay, let's go back to the closing of the financial period here, and let's select December again, and let's see if we've got any unreleased documents here. And you'll notice now that the system is prompting us that we have no unreleased documents for the selected period or periods. So now we know that we've released any, we've processed or dealt with any unreleased transactions. And so everything that's posted should reflect here, and we should be good, right? Now, before we just move forward with wanting to close the financial period, we want to perform a couple of checks, and we're going to be doing this on each subledger. So it'll be the same process for each of the different modules, but we'll go through because there might be some differences in these different modules that you might want to take advantage of. So we'll review those and go through a different, the differences between those. So in here, what we'll do is next step was we said we needed to revalue. So if you have any type of multi-currency where you need to revalue your AP accounts, you can now do this. And in here, you'll notice that I typed in screen CM504. I have that referenced in the deck, and we can share some of these details with you after, or they'll be available in the recording. But CM504000 relates to this revalue AP accounts here. So I'll open up this tab here. And in here, if we had any other or kept any other currency for these vendors, Canadian or euros or anything like that, we could revalue those accounts and get them ready for the foreign, make sure that the currency rates are applicable to our base default currency, as opposed to, again, we may operate in a different, with a different vendor and have different currencies. And so we may need to revalue that at the end of the year. And so here's a process that we would use to do that. Okay. And now what we'll do is, and I don't have any for this revaluing that I have. Oh, I want to make sure, am I still... I don't know if we're still sharing. Courtney, can you help me with that?
No, we lost your screen share there, so you'll have to pull that
Perfect.
back up.
I'm sorry. I think I might have closed that. There we go. Now we're back here.
No worries, everyone. We are live.
All right. Thank you. So, okay. So now that would be the revaluing if we needed to do that step. And so now we'll work through the reconciling the AP accounts against the GL balances. So we'll do that now. So in here, we'll now go to our AP balance by GL account. And so we can run this here. And we'll run this report. And I'm going to move over. That's what's getting me. It's the tab swapping. So thank you for everyone's patience. And I hope I'm not moving too quickly through it. But it looks great. And everybody can follow along. So now we've got this AP balance by GL account. And so I'm going to run this report now. And what we want to focus on here is really the account document total here, which is $7,779,767.46. And so the purpose of running this subledger first is that we want to know what the balance according to the subledger is, and then match that against our trial balance so that we can make sure that those tie out. And so you may say, well, why would that be different? Why would those documents, or why would there ever be a discrepancy between a subledger and the general ledger, right? And it could be that when you performed an entry that maybe you did a journal entry directly into, or journal transaction directly into the general ledger, but you did not post that to the subledger. And so in some cases that can cause the two to come out of balance, right? And so we would have to reconcile those differences before we close the period. Generally speaking, we want these to tie out. It's what would keep us in line with good accounting principles. And so that would allow for us to, close the period and feel good about, those things, reconciling and closing out, right? So that's how we have the balance here. And now if we go over to our financial finance module here, we can now run the trial balance detailed report, and we can take a look at that. We'll do that together, and I'll share that tab. Perfect. So we know that for here, this is our AP balance here. And again, it was $7,700,000. So we'll go to our AP accounts payable down here at the bottom here. And you'll notice that down here, our balance does tie out to what our reporting balance was, right? So that's $7,779,767.46. And if I go back over to our subledger report here, you'll see that that does tie out, right? So these reports are in sync, and they do, and they are reflecting the same balances that we would expect, and that means that that we would be good to close this period. So let's do that now. Go back here. We'll go back into our payables here, and we will go to close financial periods, and we will select both periods here. We're not going to use the adjustment period right now, and then we'll process this. Excellent. And as expected, both of these were processed. And so if I go now back to the finance module and go to the master financial calendar, I can now see that I have now closed AP. And so we'll work on AR next. Okay. So let us go back to the deck real quick, and we'll go through a couple of pieces of information there. Great. So now on the accounts receivable side, there's a couple of other steps that we'll want to take advantage of. The AP, again, pretty straightforward. If you're keeping your currencies in a different, a multi-currency or in a different base currency, Canadian or euros, you want to revalue that before you close those any periods, or before you get ready to close the year. For the accounts receivable, we've got a couple of other steps that apply specific to this module. So we do have the calculate overdue charges depending on the statement cycle. So it could be that if you are charging overdue, if you are have in effect overdue charges for statements, that you'll want that to be processed before you close the end of the year, so that balance is included in the period. And so this process here is basically to say that you'll want to run through this screen. You'll want to make sure that you'll calculate those and then release those transactions so that they do impact the ledger before we close it out. And the other is that if we have any auto payments that might need to be applied as well from the receivable side, and this could be that you have, you work with a customer that has on the AR side, they have a payment method on file with you, and you want to process the auto payments for them, that you're going through and applying those auto payments to any open invoices. And so these are two things that we'll want to do before we close out the period. They're just reminders. Again, this is steps that you might do already for your month close as opposed to the year close, but we want to treat it the same way, and we want to make sure that these are being applied appropriately. Also, if there's any dunning letters, we want to prepare and release those. And then we want to release any unreleased transactions. So now we're getting into the same step for the AP side. And then let's go ahead and review the next slide here, which is AR continued. We'll also want to revalue any multi-currency customers as well. So same step we did for the AP side, but we'll do it for the customers. And then once we've worked through those different screens, we then will reconcile the AR subledger against the general ledger, and making sure that those tie out before we close the financial period. So let's go through and do that together really quick. So back to Acumatica, and we will go here into our receivables here, And we will go. First step that we need to do for the receivables piece is let's go to calculate overdue charges. She'll show that screen if you've not seen it before. It's AR 507000, and this is the calculate overdue charges. And again, depending on your statement cycle, if it's at the end of the month, you'll want to calculate any of those overdue charges, and you can run that process. And if you have any or need any to be processed, you can calculate it. I don't, or I'm not running overdue charges. So you'll see here that there's nothing to be processed here. But again, if you're running this process, you want to make sure that you do run it and that you are processing it. Okay. Next would be if you are applying auto payments. So again, this would be if you've got your payment file on record for your customers, you'll want to do your apply auto payments. And so this is AR 506000. And in here, you've got your auto apply payments process. And again, we can just take this and we can process this. I don't have any, so nothing should process here. But if we had any auto payments that were there, this was where you'd want them to be processed and applied. Okay. You can also do the apply credit memos or release financial batch when finished. So right now we have it, it would apply the auto payments, and then it would put those documents on hold, and then you would review them, and then you'd be able to release them as needed. Okay. If you have any dunning letters or that's applicable to you, you would at this point prepare and release those. Again, we won't go, we'll skip that steps so that we don't run out of time. And I want to get to some of the other sections. But again, if that is applicable to you for dunning letters, you would prepare and release those dunning letters now. Let's go to the part of the process here that is the closed financial periods. And so at this point here, we'll go to closed financial periods. And again, we're just using this screen to determine if we have any unreleased documents. And again, it's the closed financial periods within the receivables module. So you'll notice that every subledger has a closed financial periods process. So if you go through each one, you're going to find that each of these have this closed financial periods, and it's just different depending on what screen what module you're in. So receivables will go to processes, will go to closed financial periods here. And in here, again, just like with AP, we've already gone through for each month or other period that has happened throughout the year. Those are already closed, so it's just December. We'll select this here. I shouldn't have any unreleased documents. Systems signaling that that is true. I don't have any unreleased documents for the selected period or periods, meaning that everything that should be released has been released. Okay, so that's great. That puts us in position to process this pretty quickly. And so next, what we'll want to do is revalue multi-currency customers. So again, similar to if we have vendors that are that have documents in a different currency, we want to revalue. And in the same case with customers, if we need to revalue those customers into our base currency or USD, we would do that now. And so here, the screen to do that would be CM 505000, and that is this revalue AR accounts. And in here, we would select the currency that we're trying to revalue, and then we would be able to process that. Again, I don't have any customers right now that are keeping in different currencies, but if I did, that would be noted on the customer's profile, and that is what would put them into this screen here. So on there, I would have a customer, and then you can select on the customer profile their currency, and that's what would put them into this screen depending on the currency that we're trying to revalue. Okay, and so we do that process here. And once that's done, we now move on to reconciling the AR account to the GL balance. And so very similar to our AP process, we'll go to the receivables here, and we'll run this AR balance by GL account report. And again, we're going to run it by the account summary. So we'll do that. This just gives us everything. Last time I was in my documents, but we'll want to do account summary. We'll run this. And this gives us our AR balance by account. and this is for account 110000. And so we've got our balance there at $8,518,889.59. So that is what the balance that we will be matching to the general ledger. So we will go over to our financial. We will run our trial balance detailed report here. And I'll share this tab with you. And on here, you will see that for our AR account, or that 11000 account, that our ending balance is $8,518,889.59. And that does tie out to our, and I'll share this tab again, that does tie out to our subledger account summary. So again, there can be differences in this report, which is why we run these reports, right? So similar to when your implementation happened and when you would have gone live with us at that time, if you recall, we will import the subledger balances separate from the trial balance. And so the idea is that we load those individually, and then we will turn the system on so that you can begin transacting. And those should stay in balance throughout the year, right? But again, if you're performing top-sided entries, or you're doing an entry directly into the general ledger, and you're not posting it to the subledger, which can happen, then it could be that if it didn't come through the subledger, that the subledger is showing now a discrepancy between the two, right? And so that can happen and would require for us to now examine, well, why is that? You can dive into that, by the way, into these. So what I did here was select I selected I'll show you right now. So on here, you can click through on this account. This is a hyperlink here. And so you can click into this, and it will open up a tab of that account details. And I'll share this tab. And so you can go into here and you're able to see the account details of how it's getting that $8 million ending balance, right? So that's why we say, run the trial balance, and then you can select that. And then you can also go back to your subledger report here and do the same thing, right? So click through on the hyperlink, which would then go through and show you, oh, looks like it did not. I might have, give me a second here. Might have clicked over to it too soon. So let's do this. We'll do that. And we'll do actual. We'll do financial year is 2024. And so you'll be able to see what those balances are, account balance by period. And so you can see that in here, and it produces the details. I'm going to share this tab real quick. And so you can see that here as well. And we can change the period here as needed. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to our tab here. And now that we've done that, we can now, so now at this point, let's review what we've done so far. We've calculated any overdue charges that we would have, for statements that are paid late or outside of our credit terms. We would have processed those charges so that they impacted the subledger. We would have at this point applied any auto payments that we have with our customers. We would have prepared and released stunning letters. We would have released any transactions, reviewed in the subledger, made sure that we saw that. And then we would have revalued multi-currency customers, in which customers that are keeping a different base or standard currency than what we do to run our business. We would have revalued those customers, and then we would have reconciled the subledger against the general ledger. And so now that all of those steps have been done, and now that we know that these are tied out and that they're reconciled and balanced now, we would now prepare and process our customer statements. So now would be a good time to run your end of month statements if you're doing that. And so you would just again process and send out those customer statements for the end of the year. And then once we've done that, at this stage here, it's also important that we would calculate and process any commissions, right? So the objective here is that once our AR is tied out and our customers' balances are tying out and everything is good to close the year. Before we move on to actually closing the financial period, these are just some steps that folks do at this time, right? So again, they'll go through and process the final customer statement of the year, and get that over to the customer. And any commissions that you have for end of this period, again, you likely are running these by your end of month anyway, so you'll want to do that at this point. For end of year, it would be the same thing, since it's just a month that we're closing out within the year. Okay. At this point, now that we've done those steps, we'll go in back to our receivables here. We'll go to our close financial periods, and we will select both of these here, and we will just process. Awesome. So now they're both closed, and we'll go over to our finance, and we'll go back to our master financial calendar here. And now you'll see that AR is now closed as well. So we're going to move over to our inventory module. So we'll go back to the slides and review those really quick. Awesome. Next we'll do banking, and then we'll go on to inventory. I apologize. Thanks for that piece. I was just reading the master financial calendar. So yeah, we'll go to banking and cash. This is a pretty simple module to close out. This just has to, I mean, I say simple, but let me but let me correct myself. This could be a simple process if we're importing bank statements and we're using the bank feeds feature within Acumatica to bring those feeds in. Then you're bringing all of your transactions, and then reconciling against your cash accounts would be something that would be easier to do. If you have a process that is outside of Acumatica, this might take a bit more time to reconcile your bank statement to the Acumatica, your cash accounts. So this could take a little longer, right? This is assuming that you're using the features within Acumatica. We're going to review those together, though, but there's not a lot in this module. So we'll go over to Acumatica. We'll walk through that. Awesome. And so in this step here, banking and cash is really just this banking module here. Some folks will call it cash module, but it's the banking one here. And so in here, again, we'll want to reconcile any cash accounts and bank statements. You'll do that. And again, this could be if you're using or you're taking your bank statements, it's highly advisable that, and you don't need a feature for this, but you can use this import bank process, which is just to import your bank transactions within the system. Okay. And this importing bank transactions, you're able to do it by cash account, and you'd be bringing these in through an Excel. You do it directly to this screen here, and you'd use this load records. And then the system has matching rules that will help you match the transactions to any of the invoices or any of the bills that have been paid out, or any of the invoices that have happened within the system. And those rule sets, by the way, are under these bank transaction rules here under your preferences. So if you go to the bank transaction rules here, I don't have any rules set up, but I'll show you what that looks like really quick. I think we can do that in about 60 seconds here, and this will be helpful to some folks. So if you've got the rule description, you might say, like, this is where you might put like your meals and entertainment, right? Something like this. And in here, you would then be able to determine, is this a disbursement or a receipt? If it's, if essentially, if it's a disbursement, it's a payable. If it's a receipt, it's a receivable, right? In this case, because it's meals and entertainment, it would be a disbursement, right? We could then put the cash account that we expect this will apply to. So we could say, we pay a lot of that out of our a company checking account is where that cash account is. And so, and keep in mind for your cash account to your GL account, keep in mind that your cash account is just a reference to the GL account. These are equal to one another, but they don't have to be. You could have called this cash account really anything. And in fact, it can be alphanumeric. It doesn't have to be this 102 to 102 account. It just so happens to be that this was done really neatly. So my cash account matches my GL account, but that's not always the case. And that's okay, by the way. I want to make sure that folks understand that you don't have to have the same cash account ID as it is the GL account. So you can select this here now for your cash account. It's going to put in the currency there, and then you're able to give wild cards or match cases. And so you might say, like, if the transaction says S bucks or something like that for Starbucks or whatever, or if it's got Uber or something like that, you're able to call out what the transaction description might include. You're in there, and then you can do auto matching for this, and you can auto match to a specific amount if it's a transaction you expect to see recurring over and over. If it's between certain values, so you say, generally speaking, any value between $1,000 and $2,000 that is under here, we typically file it here. You're able to create this rule set here. And what this allows for you to do is, once these bank transaction rules are set, is that when you go in to do your import bank transactions, it will use that rule set to then try and classify the transactions for you, so that you don't have to work through those individually, right? That can be quite painful. So this is where you'd import those bank transactions and then work through your reconciliation. So again, you'd have to do your bank deposits. So this would be anything that's in your undeposited funds. You'd want to move those over to your checking accounts or your banks, so you'd want to process bank deposits. And again, this is something you'd be doing monthly anyways. And then you'd run your reconciliation statement to make sure that that all balances out. So nothing will change when you do this, right? This is something that, again, you would have been doing throughout the year on a period by period basis. And so at the end of the year, you'd run through this step here. And then once these tie out, or the bank statement is tying out to the statements on your cash accounts, and you can review your cash account summary or details to find out balances there. And once those tie out to your bank statement, you're then able to then close the financial period. Okay. So in here, I don't have bank statement to reconcile against. So I'm just going to close this financial period here. But again, had we gone through the bank statement piece of it, we would be matching that against our bank statement to make sure that this balances out. Okay. And that's if I was not bringing in all the transactions, or if I was bringing them in manually, I'd want that to match in the system, and then of course match against my subledger, my general ledger. Okay. So we'll process this. We'll close this out. And we're at 17 minutes, so I'm going to speed up just a little bit here. Let's go back. I'm going to check my master financial calendar here. And so we did the cash here. And so now we'll work through inventory and fixed assets. We'll get through those ones pretty quickly here. And then we'll be able to show you what that looks like. So we'll go back to the slides. And we are now on to inventory. And I think I only have a few slides left anyway. So yeah, we should have enough time. Okay, perfect. So on the inventory piece here, just like we've done with every module and subledger up until this point, the inventory module is no different if we've had any unreleased transactions. And you might say, well, what would that look like? And it might be if you had a shipment that went out and you hadn't processed the invoice. Don't forget that it's very common in Acumatica that when a shipment goes out, that your inventory transaction doesn't take place until your invoice is generated, meaning that there's not a post that's done yet to the inventory transaction, or it may create it but not release it. And so in those instances, that might be some of what the system you might see in unreleased transactions. So that's what we'll review, a little bit of that. And then we'll want to validate our ending balance from historical valuation to our trial balance summary report. And then once those tie out, we'll go ahead and close that. So we'll go back to Acumatica here. And in Acumatica, we'll go over to our inventory and we'll go to close financial periods. Again, we always start at this close financial period screen. And the purpose of doing that is that we're able to select this pretty quickly, and then we can say unreleased documents, right? And so you'll see here that we don't have any unreleased documents, but if we did, again, that report would show up and we'd be able to look at those transactions pretty easily. And so the system does that quite nicely for us. The other part of this too is that there might be documents not posted to inventory. So that was that invoice that I was talking about. And so you might see that there's a document that's not yet posted to the subledger, and you can review this because that it would be a byproduct, right? So we know that the invoice at that process should generate the inventory file. And so at this point, we might have a document that's not posted to inventory yet. So we can review those here. We don't have any of that in the system, and this will do a pop-up. And I can share this tab of what this report would look like, but we don't have any of that here. If we did, we'd see that here, and we'd be able to drill down and determine what next steps would be. Okay. Close that out. Great. And so now what we'll now do is we'll run our historical inventory valuation report. So we'll do that now. And in our inventory historical valuation, we'll go ahead and run this report, and we'll go to the last page here. And we've got our ending balance here of $15,896,946.49. And so we can run that against our trial balance summary report. And so again, we will go back to our finance tab, and we'll go to our trial balance. We can do our summary report for this one here, and we'll run this process here. And then for our inventory asset account, we can see that balance ties out here. And so I'm going to share this tab here. And in here, this is the summary report here. And in here, we'll go to the inventory asset account here, which is this 12100 account. And then in here, you'll see that we've got that 15,896,946.49. And so the ending balance is tying out to our historical inventory valuation. And so these are balanced. It could be, by the way, that if you don't see that the balances are tying out here, you may need to run an inventory process that recalculates your inventory balances. That's IN 505000. This is just recalculate inventory. And this might happen if you've done like large adjustments in the system, or you might have done it could be that you had a large receipt that got processed or through a manufacturing process. We do recommend that you recalculate inventory, that you run this monthly. And so if you don't have an automation schedule for the recalculate inventory job, it is highly advised that you do set one up that processes once a month to just recalculate the inventory. It just goes through the files and the tables and making sure that and this could be if you're in a fast-paced inventory environment, but it's not just specific to inventory. Each of the subledgers have a process in which you recalculate customer balances. So this is one that you'll also want to run. And in payables, you also have one that's called recalculate vendor balances. So for those, I want to share with you that for recalculating vendor balances, recalculating customer balances, and then recalculating inventory, it is advised by Acumatica that you have monthly jobs that run those, that keep the system. And again, this could be that if you have a high turnover where the inventory is coming in and it's posting really quickly, we have seen examples where the tables where it may not move over some of those values. And again, it doesn't happen often, but it can happen where that value of availability may not update appropriately. And so this recalculating inventory will help that, right? In some extreme cases, we've seen folks who deal with lots of inventory quantities. They run this recalculate inventory weekly. And so they'll do it as a nightly job, and they'll have it scheduled to kick off at 10 p.m. or something like that. And depending on how large your inventory is, this recalculate inventory process can take quite some time, right? So it might take 2 or 3 hours or something like that, which is why we recommend you don't run it daily. It's something you want to run as frequent as weekly, but the recommendation from Acumatica is to run this monthly. Okay. And again, if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to our support team, and they'd be more than happy to help you set that up and get that done in the system. Okay. So these balances are tying out. So now that we know that, we'll go back to our closed financial periods here. We'll move pretty quickly through here. We'll select these here. We'll process that. These will close pretty quickly. We'll go back to our master financial calendar in here, and we will select our 2024 year. And so now we can see we've got everything done except for the fixed assets piece. So we'll do that now. Let's go back to the slides, and we'll move through the fixed assets pretty quickly here. I'm just going to talk about fixed assets at a high level. So we'll talk about it for just a few minutes here, and then we'll move on to just closing it out and then closing the year. So basically, if you've got any fixed assets, you'll just want to make sure that if you had any transactions that needed to be converted to fixed assets, or any purchases that needed to be converted to assets, that you've done that, and the screens have that so that you can process those. I'll show you what those screens look like really quickly, but I've made a note of the screen IDs in the PowerPoint there. But essentially, you'll want to make sure that if you had any purchases that should be converted to fixed assets, that you are noting those and you are converting those so you can depreciate them accordingly. And you'll need to obviously put them on a schedule. The other piece of this is making sure that if you have any unreleased fixed asset transactions, that you do release those documents. And then you'll want to calculate depreciation. The screen there is FA 502. You'll want to make sure you're calculating your depreciation. And then you'll want to reconcile your fixed assets against your accumulated depreciation accounts. And then I give you the screens to do that. Okay. Again, fixed assets is one of a niche part of the business. And so I would recommend that if you have questions on fixed assets, please reach out to somebody on our support team so we can help you walk through that. Again, not everybody is depreciating or has fixed assets that they're using. And so if you are using it, and you're using Acumatica to do the depreciation, that you run through these steps here that I have outlined. Okay. Lastly, what we'll do, and I'm going to cover this in the right now on this screen so that we don't have to come back to the general, we don't have to come back to this general ledger screen, is now that we've done that, we will then release the unreleased GL transactions. If there's any that are posted there, we'll post release but not posted transactions. So we'll do any of the post transactions that have that need to be done in the system. And then we'll revalue multi-currency at the GL account level. And then we can then close the master financial calendar. So let's go over to Acumatica. We'll take the next couple of minutes to do that. And then I think I've given myself a couple of minutes to answer questions. So really quickly, we'll go through the fixed assets module here. And as explained, we have the, as explained according to the deck that was there, you have, if you have to convert any purchases, you'll want to do that. And again, I'm just going to show you what that screen looks like really quickly here, but it's basically convert purchases to assets. So if you had any purchases that took place and you need to convert those to an asset, this is where you'd select that and you'd be able to move those over into an asset within the system. You'll want to make sure that you've done that and so that you can begin depreciating accordingly. And then you'll want to calculate any depreciation for the year, so 50200, and this will, this is FA 50200. And in here, you can calculate your depreciation in here. And then once you calculate it, you're able to then depreciate it. So calculate is an action, and then you can depreciate that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this financial period. We don't have anything for fixed assets that are specific here. We could review our unreleased documents if we needed to, but I'm just going to process that because we don't have anything. And now we'll move over to our final, the finance module, and we'll go into our master financial calendar. And you'll now see that all of our subledgers are closed. And so now you go into closing the main year. And so we'll do that by managing the financial periods here. And in here, we are able to close the final periods here. And so we are able to do that now that the system has all of the subledgers closed out. The system will let us do that. Before, typically what we'll do at this point is we'll release any unposted or unreleased documents. So you can select this and you can say, unposted documents, and the system will show us that. We don't have any unposted documents for the period. So in this case, the system is going to allow for us to close out the financial year here. If we needed to revalue any multi-currency, we could do that on screen CM 506000, and this would allow for us to revalue our GL accounts, and we could do that here. And we could select the currency and then select the accounts that were applicable for revaluing. If we needed to review any account details screen or go into that, we could begin doing that here in the finance and in account summary or account details, just like we reviewed for the AR module. You could begin reviewing that if you needed to. At this point here, we'll just go ahead and close the year here. Great. And so now we've closed the financial year for 2024 in the system. And again, we kind of went through all of those, and so we can go back to our deck there. So now that you've seen that process kind of all the way through, and seen kind of how the system works from a subledger to general ledger perspective, we're closing out each of the subledgers. I think hopefully that makes a lot of sense to everybody. And if this is your first time closing the year, I'm sure you'll have questions. You can always reach out to us. So with that, I'll hand it back to Courtney. Thanks, Courtney.
Great. Thank you, Justin. That was a super informative session. So now is the time we're about to dive into Q&A. So if you have any questions in these final moments, please go ahead and get them in. And while you're getting those questions in, we have a quick message from Noah Corwick on our MCS team. As it's year end and we're holding all these year end sessions, I'm sure a lot of you, like us, use Microsoft 365 products, so Word, Excel, Outlook. So we just want to make you aware of a special offer we have related to Microsoft 365 while you get those questions in.
Hey guys, we are doing Microsoft assessments to end out the year. What does a Microsoft licensing health checker assessment look like? Making sure you're using your licensing in the correct fashion, saving you money, trimming the fat, or using a business standard license when you should be using a business pro license. Are you using 365 in the most optimal way possible? And again, that I mentioned, hopefully saving you money and giving you support. So contact us now if you want to learn even more and dive into a Microsoft health check or assessment.
Open. I lost our deck there for a second. Great. So I just launched a poll on the right-hand side of your screen. So that poll should be live. If you'd like to take advantage of that complimentary Microsoft Health assessment, our MCS team tells me that about 90% of the time they find savings for people within their Microsoft license. Or there's also a couple other options there if you have additional questions around year end, something else to do with your Acumatica that you'd like a team member to reach out to you for, let us know in that poll and we'll make sure to put you in contact with the right people. And then I'm just checking here. I'm always a little hesitant when we don't have any questions, but sometimes that just means our presenters are very thorough, which I can definitely imagine with Justin. So with this last moment, I'm just going to talk through it because every time I go to wrap, we get a question. It never fails. So we're just going to take a second here. But I think we might not have any questions today, Justin. I think you might have taken us through everything that we needed to know.
Great. That means we've got a lot of experts on the line, which is also great.
Yes. So like I said at the beginning of this session, if you need to go back and look at any of the information Justin shared over the last hour, this recording is going to be in your inbox tomorrow afternoon, the same way you found out about it. It'll come from SWK webinars. So we hope you got all the information you needed for year end today. We'll also be following up later this month with some additional year end resources that we have throughout the year. And as I said, we do have one question. This always happens. So glad to have your question, Lisa. So They asked if we're on an older version of Acumatica, should we wait to upgrade to close the year?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that uh, depending on I would say it would be best to wait to upgrade until you close the year. If you can time it after you've upgraded, that would be best. And the only reason why is that sometimes new features that get introduced might introduce a new bug for a customization that you might have or an ISV that you might be using. And so specific to your environment, I would not risk going live on a new version with potentially issues right before you need to close the year. So my recommendation there would be to just hold off on that, close the year, and then schedule your upgrade to take place first couple of weeks in January, depending on how long it takes to close the year. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, Justin. And thank you, Lisa, for that question. So if anyone else has a question that comes to mind after the session's closed, you can always reach us at info@swktech.com. Reach out to your customer account manager, your main contact at SWK, and we'll be happy to help. So thank you all. Thank you, Justin. We hope you have happy holidays, an easy close to your year, and a wonderful rest of your week.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Take care.